Well, welcome to the 700 Club, and thanks so much for joining us. It's Alopecia Awareness Day, and everyone is talking about what happened last night. So I've got to ask, did you see it?
I did. I actually wasn't watching it live, but somebody sent me the clip.
And that's because you don't have cable television.
That's because I don't have cable television.
And
unfortunately, I was trying to watch it last night.
And you don't have a digital antenna that would allow your TV to get it live.
No, I don't. But thankfully, there's social media. And social media...
Who needs to watch it when you can get it later?
Exactly. You can get it almost in real time, maybe just 10 minutes delayed. But no, I saw the clip of Will Smith and Chris Rock having a bit of an altercation. And
well, Chris would say that was more than a bit.
Yeah, just more than a bit.
He would say that.
It's the slap heard around the world. And yeah, it's just unfortunate. I really do think it's an unfortunate event. Here is, you know, probably the biggest night of Will Smith's career. And I feel like, unfortunately, that moment has overshadowed him winning Best Actor. So that's why I feel kind of bad for him.
Well, it also highlights Denzel Washington because he didn't know that was going to happen.
Yes.
So right after Will Smith does it, he goes over to him and says, in your highest moments, that's when the devil comes for you.
I was like, go ahead and preach it, Denzel. Preach it. Yeah, it's true.
So what do you think of Chris Rock?
You know, I don't really know. I think that there was probably a lot of bad blood just boiling between, I think, Chris Rock and Will Smith and Jada Pinkett, because I think he's been saying
I think Will Smith had a whole boatload of things coming into that night that just got triggered off by that joke.
Yeah, so, you know, hopefully they've, I don't know, who knows, they've worked it out backstage. I have no idea, but it was interesting. It definitely was.
Do you know what city Will Smith comes from?
He comes from Philadelphia.
And what does that mean?
Brotherly love. So hopefully they worked it out, y'all. Hopefully they have.
Yeah, hats off to Chris Rock. Doing live TV, I've done a lot of live TV. If something like that happens, then just have the presence of mind to stay in the moment and say the show must go on. Also, hats off for saying I'm not going to file a police report. That's a stand-up move.
Yeah.
But we got to move on to the rest of the news. We're going to another place where brothers are not getting along. An historic summit is taking place in the Middle East. The foreign ministers of 4 Arab countries are meeting with Jewish leaders in the nation of Israel. At the top of the list, the mutual threat of a nuclear Iran.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is also on hand, promising that a nuclear deal with Iran will make Israel and the region safer. As Chris Mitchell reports, Israel and its new partners in the Middle East disagree.
The foreign ministers of Bahrain, the UAE, Morocco, and Egypt flew into Israel for what's called the Negev Summit. The meeting took place at the former home of David Ben-Gurion, the father of modern Israel.
The fact that they're coming here to be with us, they're recognizing that Israel is not just here, but Israel is a regional power, and regional is an allied regional power. We're an essential ally for these Arab states. It's quite an extraordinary moment.
Former Israeli ambassador to the U.S., Michael Oren, sees the gathering as history in the making, but it also provides an opportunity for Arab nations to join with Israel in expressing to the U.S. their opposition to the Iranian nuclear deal. An agreement endorsed by U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken here in Jerusalem.
The United States believes that a return to full implementation of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action is the best way to put Iran's nuclear program back in the box that it was in, but has escaped from since the United States withdrew from that agreement.
Israel's Foreign Minister Yair Lapid emphasized Israel will do what it takes to stop Iran.
From our point of view, the Iranian threat is not theoretical. The Iranians want to destroy Israel. They will not succeed. We will not let them.
Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, who tested positive for COVID after his meeting with Blinken, raised a major concern about the Iranian nuclear deal.
We're concerned about the intention to delist the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps. Their proxy, the Houthis, just this weekend carried out a horrific attack on Saudi Arabia. I hope the United States will hear the concerned voices from the region, Israel's and others, on this very important issue.
Oren says the nuclear deal in 2022 will be worse than the original 2015 agreement.
The fact of the matter is the Iranians managed to get pretty much everything they want. But they'll get a nuclear program that will enable them to retain their nuclear infrastructure, to develop intercontinental ballistic delivery systems. It will probably say nothing about the warheads. Basically, this will buy some time, maybe at most 4 years, on one part of the Iranian nuclear program, which is the enrichment program. And after those 4 years, Iran will be in the position to enrich enough uranium for hundreds of bombs. I am certain that this deal will put Israel and the Middle East on the path to a regional conflict.
Warren and others point out the deal will also give billions of dollars in sanctions relief to Iran that could spread its terror activities throughout the region. How Israel and these Arab nations at today's summit plan to confront Iran may well determine the future of the Middle East. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, I hope the administration can pull back from this and that Iran doesn't get what is currently on the table and doesn't get the ability to develop a nuclear weapon. That is a complete game changer for peace in the Middle East. I think it's absolutely clear that they would use it, and they would use it against Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv and Israel, they're called the little Satan. Guess who's the big Satan? Well, you and I, right here in the United States, where we're considered the great Satan that has put all these horrible things out in the world, and they feel fully justified in using whatever weapons they have to attack us. So let's hope our State Department listens to what they've actually said and also what they've actually done. They are the largest sponsor of terror in the world today, and there is no reason at all to negotiate with them. In other news, Democrats are calling for Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas to recuse himself from any future cases involving the 2020 election. Ephraim Graham has more on that story from the CBN Newsroom. Ephraim?
Gordon, those calls are stemming from text messages sent by Justice Thomas's wife in the weeks after the 2020 election. The Washington Post reports Jeannie Thomas sent texts to former President Trump's chief of staff, Mark Meadows, encouraging him to pursue a strategy to overturn the election results. A text from November 10th reads in part, "Help this great president stand firm, Mark. The majority knows Biden and the left is attempting the greatest heist of our history." Meadows provided 21 texts from Thomas and his 8 replies to the House committee investigating the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Senate Democrat Cory Booker said Justice Thomas should have recused himself from a case regarding the release of Trump documents from the National Archives.
Clearly, Justice Thomas should have recused himself. That's not even at question here. And I think that we also have a thorough investigation to better understand exactly what has happened with the judge's wife.
I don't think that what your spouse says should recuse you from, whether it's in the legislative branch or in the judicial branch. That would be a new precedent.
Journal editorial board weighed in over the weekend, saying the texts amount to nothing meaningful, and the leaked messages could be an act of revenge against Jeannie Thomas, who signed a letter opposing the January 6th commission and calling on the House GOP to expel Republican committee members Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger. Turning now to the war in Ukraine, where President Zelensky is accusing Western nations of cowardice for failing to take on Vladimir Putin. This comes after the Biden administration clarified the U.S. goal is not regime change, after the president said Putin, quote, cannot stay in power. Dale Hurd has more on this story.
As the war in Ukraine enters its second month, Russia has still failed to take the largest Ukrainian cities and is now trying to divide Ukraine instead. Russia says its main focus is now taking control of the eastern Donbas region. The head of Ukrainian military intelligence says Russia wants to split Ukraine in two, similar to how East and West Germany were created after World War II. Ukrainian forces have retaken several villages around Kharkiv in the east and near Sumy in the north, threatening Russian army supply lines. Russian forces continued to pound the strategic port city of Mariupol, needed to link Russian gains in the east and south. Former CIA director and retired four-star General David Petraeus calls Mariupol the Ukrainian Alamo.
It's fighting to the last defender and pinning down multiple Russian battalions in so doing, very heroically. But ultimately, it looks as if it's going to have to collapse. It's going to be taken.
Meanwhile, in the western city of Lviv, Russia released this new video of missile strikes targeting fuel depots and defense infrastructure. Addressing his nation, Ukrainian President Zelensky accused the West of lacking the courage to take on Russian President Vladimir Putin, calling on NATO to give his country more tanks and planes. In Warsaw, Poland, Joe Biden delivered a speech in which he issued Vladimir Putin a blunt warning.
Don't even think about moving on 1 single inch of NATO territory. We have sacred obligation. We have a sacred obligation under Article 5 to defend each and every inch of NATO territory with the full force of our collective power.
Then Biden seemed to call for an end to Vladimir Putin's rule.
For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power.
Secretary of State Blinken quickly walked back Biden's words.
We do not have a strategy of regime change in Russia or anywhere else for that matter.
A Russian official told Reuters that's not for Biden to decide. The president of Russia is elected by Russians. In a new interview with independent Russian journalist, President Zelensky said Ukraine might be willing to become a neutral nation and not join NATO in exchange for peace. The interview was not shown inside Russia. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Galina Kucha has worked for CBN in Ukraine for 28 years. Even though her family fled the fighting, she stayed behind to serve those in need. During a visit to our Operation Blessing warehouse in Poland, she shared how the relief shipments are giving people hope they're not alone.
I came to work in CBN in Operation Blessing about 28 years ago. The first thing Operation Blessing started doing in Ukraine was sending containers of humanitarian aid. Since then, with every situation that has risen, Operation Blessing always responded to people's needs.
But in all those years with Operation Blessing, Galina never experienced anything as terrifying as the war in Ukraine.
Everything started from Kyiv. The armed forces of Ukraine were about 6 miles from my house. We heard terrible explosions, and the house shook from the noise. We didn't know what to do. Do we need to run, or is there no sense in running away?
Galina's family left the country when the war began, but she stayed behind to continue serving her people in Ukraine. She was able to make a brief visit to the Operation Blessing warehouse in Poland.
Blessings begin to flow from here in the form of this food and other goods. In 2 or 3 days, it will arrive in Ukraine and go out to all corners of the country. We have a lot of work ahead, but many blessings will come from helping Ukrainians survive this trouble.
Thanks to Operation Blessing donors, Galina and others on the ground can continue to help families in need.
I think that's why we all exist. So when such circumstances arise, we can help people and support them in anything they're going through. It can be spiritual help or a kind word. It can be bread, water, or assistance evacuating, different things. But someone needs to be not afraid. Someone needs to give hope to people and let them know they're not alone. This is what we are doing now.
What a joy to know that you at home are able to give that hope. Gordon?
If you want to be a part of giving hope to the people of Ukraine, to the refugees that are going and flooding across the Polish border, as well as those who are deciding to stay, and let's be a help to them as well. Let's give them hope. If you want to be a part of it, give to the Operation Blessing Disaster Relief Fund. You can write to us at CBN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia, 23463. Just put Operation Blessing Disaster Relief Fund in the memo line of a check. You can text us, OB Crisis, to 71777, or you can go to cbn.com. There's a place on the giving page where you can designate your gift. Let's join together and help those in such desperate need. These refugees literally have left with nothing, and they have no ability to earn money in the countries where they're fleeing to. It's women, it's children, they're in desperate need. Be a part of helping them. 1-800-700-7000.